Okay, thank you again, Mr. Havrylov, for accepting this interview, especially during these difficult times. I would like to start our discussion with the recent developments when it comes to the US military aid to Ukraine. We know that President Donald Trump has suspended the US military aid to Ukraine and also the intelligence sharing. We know he asked also the partners to stop sharing intelligence with Washington, intelligence that Washington with Ukraine. I'm talking about the ones that Washington obtained. And I want to ask you, how does that affect Ukraine right now?
So we are in the technological transformation in our modern warfare. That's why for us, we are less dependent from the United States now, comparing with the previous 3 years of this war. We are very grateful to the United States for what they provided to us in 22, 23, and 24. But last year we learned that there could be some kind of instability in supply from the United States on the eve of the presidential election. So we started to prepare ourselves and our partners in Europe to the scenario when the United States will start to slow down or maybe even to stop the assistance to Ukraine during the according to the new vision of the new administration. That's why we were ready to that scenario, and maybe not in full because it will take some time and efforts from our side and from European partners to adjust this deficit with ammunition or maybe some other systems. But once again, we are not so dependent from United States in 25 because we are using a lot of new technologies on the ground, which are of Ukrainian origin. First of all, robotized platform, drones, and everything is Ukrainian origin. And it substitutes the deficit of ammunition or maybe other heavy systems in this war. And also Europe become much more effective in production of the new equipment, which they couldn't provide in 22, 24. It took for them almost 3 years to raise awareness and to start some kind of investments and to prepare the industry for production of defense-related items. That's why we're totally confident that we will have a supplement for the deficit of US equipment in this war. But there are several systems which we need to talk with the United States to keep them provided to us. It's air defense, first of all, Patriot type systems, which can allow us to protect our sky against ballistic missiles, not just against drones or cruise missiles, but against ballistic missiles. And also it's about some systems like HIMARS or ATACMS, but similar systems started to emerge in Europe and other countries of the world. Information exchange, of course, we got a lot of information from the United States to assist us with the current fighting. Well, nevertheless, US is not the only supplier of this information, so we can get not 100%, but a substantial amount of similar information from other partners, and we are working on that very hard now.
But how long do you think Ukraine can continue this war without this help coming from the United States, if hypothetically the US will not restart the deliveries?
We will sustain this war as long as it is necessary because we just adjusted to this new technological warfare on the ground. It's not 2022 or 23. At the time, we of course could reflect about how long it will take for us to withstand this war, but not in 25. In 25, they're fully ready to continue this war with less supplies of higher, not the higher, but the heavy equipment, like a heavy artillery system or something like that, because we have supplemented with something new on this market. And that's why I'm confident that, of course, there will be no problem. There will be problem, of course, because we have to. We will have more efforts to be done. Of course, it will require to take care of the people, and also it will be a little bit bloody on the ground. But we are not in the condition of 22, 24, in 25. So we will sustain this war with the assistance and support from our European partners.
There are also a lot of talks nowadays about a possible European peacekeeping mission in Ukraine after a peace agreement is signed between Ukraine and Russia. And I would like to ask you, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a feasible plan, considering the countries that have so far formally said that they accept to send soldiers to the Ukrainian territory? And we are talking about Great Britain, France, and also the Baltic states.
I don't think that the peacekeeping force idea is feasible now, because there is no agreement or deal between two countries in this war. Even with some kind of deal, I don't think that Russia will agree to have peacekeepers on their territories and also on our territories, maybe, because it's humiliating for Putin. It means that it will demonstrate his weaknesses, not capability to introduce a kind of stabilization force or predictable force in the area. So I think we should talk about peacekeepers later, not now. There is no need just to raise this issue now until we don't have agreement or a kind of deal between all sides in this conflict.
But what do you think Russia wants from a peace agreement? What could Russia's conditions be to get to a settlement?
Putin and his team they are hostages of their own propaganda. It means that they can't propose the people in Russia a deal where they can, without achievement of the goals in Ukraine, of so-called special military operation. But the main goal of Russia and Putin in the Ukraine, it was to remove the leadership of Ukraine and to make Ukraine a kind of the province of Russia, like occupied territory they already done formally in the constitution. That's why for them to accept any kind of deal with the loss of occupied territories, it's a death to the existence in Moscow. That's why they will do up to the end to maneuver to find any kind of victorious scenario with us, for us to surrender maybe some territories, maybe all territories which are now captured by Russia. And that will be the real hot point for the conversations with American participation. And US administration, they will understand sooner or later, I think, even sooner, that it's not about peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. It's about the Russian ambition to occupy Ukraine, and they will never change that ambition, because in other case, it's a death to the regime in Moscow.
Because you also have great military experience. From what you see right now on the battlefield, how long do you think Russia can actually continue this war? Because there are a lot of talks about Russia having economic issues, also military issues.
Because this war is moving into the technological confrontation. It means both sides are using technologies as drones, robotized systems. So this war is about economies. So the country which are in a stronger position with regard to economy will inevitably win this war. And because Russia is very limited with economy, and they don't have support from outside countries to support the economy, that's why they are destined to be a loser in this war. We are supported by the huge industrial economies of Europe. Germany, economy number 3 in the world. So how we can compare this Russian GDP, which is less than GDP of, for example, state Texas or state California in the United States? They can't sustain this war in terms of economy and finances. And people in Russia also already exhausted with it. It's not popular war now, comparing with 22-23. And no propaganda in Moscow can downsize these moves in Russia. So all we can do now, Ukraine, to continue fighting, introducing new technologies on the ground, to reduce risk to our people, first of all, through that, to protect our infrastructure, to protect our cities, together with our partners. And there will be no way for Russia to win this war, and we will see it, I hope, this year.
We have definitely seen in the recent weeks that President Trump's foreign policy has shifted to Russia because he's trying to approach President Vladimir Putin. Do you feel, considering all of this, that the US is somehow abandoning Ukraine? Because these are the talks that are right now taking place in the diplomatic circles, let's say.
I understand that the main goal of the new American administration is just to find a settlement of this conflict, not to pay resources for that in future, because they need resources inside the country, inside the United States, to support their economy, to support their transformation. That's why Ukraine is not the only conflict in this world where Trump is finding some kind of fast solution and to relieve money for his external agenda. It's also about the United Nations and other international organizations where he is looking for the withdrawal from that. Is also all about the money, how to save the money of U.S. budget for internal transformation. That's why in Ukrainian case, they expected that will be fast, very quick deal with Putin and Ukraine under the pressure from United States to find a very fast some kind of settlement and then move forward with their own agenda in the United States. But they didn't take into account the position of Ukraine, not of the president of Ukraine, but Ukrainian civil society and military, who are not supporting any deal with Russia, with ceasefire or given to Russia our occupied territories. And there is no pressure, sufficient pressure. There will never be enough pressure from United States administration to change us that position. And that is a real challenge for new administration, because I think in next 2 weeks, they will understand that Ukraine will keep strong in their desire to liberate the territories. And they have to do something with Russia in this case. It's not about abandoning Ukraine. It's trying to find a kind of realistic solution. And in the end, they understand that Ukraine is not changing out under the pressure. They have to try to press Russia. And if they are not successful, of course, they will continue to support us in some or another way. But I think Europe will be number one for us in this situation.
We know that last week in Washington, President Zelensky and President Donald Trump were supposed to sign that minerals deal, but they did not do it. At the moment, we know that both teams from Ukraine and from the US have restarted those discussions. So my question to you would be, how will that affect what is happening on the battlefield or the full US policy towards Kiev, and what are the security guarantees that Kiev wants to get from that deal?
This deal was an offer or the proposal from United States. It was a precondition for them to start a kind of engagement in this conflict. That's why it was not very welcome at the beginning from our side. By step, both sides just prepared a consensus paper, maybe with less security obligations, guarantees or something like that. But nevertheless, this paper is still on the table. Both sides are working with it, and we will see next week if it's signed or not. And at the same time, once again, this situation we are now in, with Europe ready, when Europe was ready to support Ukraine with everything they have, for us, it's not so, let it be so strategically important to sign that deal. And we will see a number of conversations next days and maybe a week about the sense of that paper, about the scale of this paper, about some security things, security guarantee things. So there will be some kind of conversation between two parties. As a neutral, not very obligative paper, of course, it's not a problem to sign for Ukraine. But if there is an obligation for us to provide access, specifically number one priority for American companies, to our minerals without any kind of obligations to support us military, for us it's not interesting paper. And we are working on that with our partners in the United States. But once again, our position is stronger than administration of President Trump expected.
So you think that is not going to be signed if the US doesn't specifically says that is going to militarily support Ukraine on the long term?
Not necessary. Of course, there can be some words inside which will say not directly to the security guarantees, but a kind of mechanism of consultations or something like that. I don't think this paper is so important in the current situation. And I think that as a consensus for two parties to work more closely on settlement of the conflict, it could be signed. We'll see that in the next several days. Well, but I couldn't put it on the number one place now, because there was a message from our president to President Trump recently that we are ready to talk together on the peace settlement, and both sides started to work closely in Saudi Arabia soon. On this regard, there will be activization of consultations of the United States with Russia in parallel. And during this process, we will see what is the position of Moscow. And if Putin will insist on keeping our occupied territories without any consensus, in this case, for us, any mineral deals with the United States or whoever in this world doesn't matter. We will continue fighting with support of European countries.
But if, let's say, in a peace agreement, a future peace agreement, Russia puts as a condition to keep the territories it occupied until now, Ukraine will not accept the deal, you're saying?
Yes, we have very strong mood and in our civil society and on military that we are not going to go to the deal with the losing of our territories. There may be some kind of consultations as a next stage about the Crimea or something, or maybe about the line of contact in 2022 prior to the invasion, like that. It could be a kind of discussion in this regard. But all territories which were taken by Russia from the 2022, they should be returned back to Ukraine. It's our just principal position. We will see. It's an opinion of our civil society and military. Of course, politicians are now at the table, and they will talk to the United States, to European countries, to Russian representatives, just to demonstrate our position. And we will see how strong are our political leaders in this very tough discussion with Russia. For Russia, it's a moment of historical failure. So for them, it's not easy to move back from them pre-war and during the war rhetoric. For them, it's very difficult to explain to people why they decided to abandon the territories they occupied in 22-24 with almost 1 million killed and wounded. You can't justify to families in Russia that all this special military operation was a mistake. In this case, they are losers as leaders, and they will become next let it be so problematic guys inside the country. So they will try up to the end to keep the position on not leaving our territories, but they are losing economically and other things day by day. So we will see, but we will come through some very tough, serious negotiation process in next 2 months. I think so.
While all these talks are taking place on a diplomatic level, the war continues, and we've seen a lot of attacks from Russia towards Ukraine in the last weeks, heavy attacks. So what is the situation right now on the battlefield, both on the Ukrainian front, but also in Kursk, in Russia?
The fighting is going on. Fighting is going on both on our territory and in Kursk region as well. It's very dynamic, but it's not the same scale as it was maybe 1 month ago, because Russia lost the tempo. They lost a lot of people, and a lot of equipment, and they are not capable to restore all this capacity fast. And once again, we are moving to technological warfare, where it doesn't matter how many people do you have or how many equipment do you have, because all this equipment is identified and killed in the so-called gray zone, which is now has a range up to 20 kilometers. So to advance in this gray zone environment in modern war is not possible without heavy losses, if you would like to do it in an old-fashioned way. That's why this war, after moving to this technological confrontation, will be not about the movement. It's about the robotic system fighting each other and other things. And once again, it's about economies who can sustain this kind of technological warfare.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Havrylov. That was all from me.